This is Grądy, which is located some 10 kilometers or so to the northwest of Ostrów Mazowiecka, which is in the northeast of Poland. So it's Ostrów Mazowiecka is on the road between Warsaw and Białystok. Here, what you see here are mass graves. They're the mass graves of Soviet POWs who were held here at this camp, at the location of this camp, Stalag 324, and were effectively allowed to die. These Soviet POWs were brought here and just left in the open, in cages, literally cages. I mean, you've possibly seen the film where Himmler's walking beside a cage full of POWs left out in the open near Minsk. And in this case, this camp would have looked very much the same. The Soviet POWs had to find some shelter to build a hole in the ground and make that into a sort of house. I mean, obviously this was happening all over Europe. This was also the fate of the Poles who were deported from regions occupied by the Soviet Union and then taken off to Siberia and Kazakhstan and other far off places within the Soviet Empire. As far as these prisoners were concerned, roughly 3/4 of the approximately 110,000, we don't quite know how many of these people were brought here. We don't know how many survived, but approximately 3/4. You can say 70,000, 80,000, maybe 90,000. We don't know. Huge numbers. This was the largest POW camp, or one of the largest POW camps of all in the Second World War, and I think it was the largest in the general government. It was located here quite conveniently because it was so close to the border and one of the jumping off points for the invasion of the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941. So prisoners could quite easily be brought to this location. Now, at a time when we see, the war in Ukraine, we see the splendor of the events on the 9th of May every single year, which is therefore a glorification of war, which the current regime in Russia does. Effectively, it is a successor regime to Nazi Germany. But when it comes to looking after those that died for the Kremlin, this is what it looks like. Now compare that to British, or American, French or Polish military cemeteries wherever you may go. There it's completely different. Absolutely different. Here, the Soviets, Kremlin just could not care less. And I think to a large extent, it's the same with those people who die in Ukraine for Putin. I did a video, which I'll give a link to, on this, of how a widow was treated who they just wouldn't pay her money after her husband, presumably, was killed. He just disappeared. But actually, we can even take a little bit more of this propaganda from the... I don't know if it's fair to say propaganda. I'm just going to show it to you what is actually written up here in Russian. And here, so we learn here. You see that? In memory of 41,000 Soviet soldiers who were held here and killed and died under bestial conditions in 1941-42. Right? So here, it's 41,000. I think that when this monument was built in 1962, they may have known, they may not have known. I mean, it's not fair to say that they knew that the numbers were far greater, but of course they didn't want to the beginning, they didn't want to actually say that was lots of Soviet troops were killed. It was only later then they started playing on the great losses that happened in the Soviet Union. When Soviet soldiers returned after maybe even 4 years of inhumane treatment, they were treated as traitors because they surrendered. As far as I'm aware, in Russia today, there is absolutely no recognition of the people who were captured through no fault of their own. Now, March of this year, I took part in a ceremony which marked the 80th anniversary of the Great Escape, and the daughter of one of the Great Escapers was there at the ceremony. And in Britain, the people who surrendered, okay, we realise it wasn't their fault, okay, particularly in things like bombing, and lots of air crews were taken prisoner, and same for the United States, with bombing campaigns, and they were treated as heroes once they returned. Not so these poor people. The treatment of the Soviet POWs is something which I think is absolutely horrendous, and part of the Stalin regime. Let's face it, the Soviet Union was one of the countries which started the Second World War. At the 25th of August 1939, signed the treaty with non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany, part of which was a secret protocol to divide up Poland. So Hitler invaded Poland on the 1st of September, the Soviet Union on the 17th of September. Then Soviet Union invaded Finland, it occupied Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, it made huge territorial demands of Romania, all thanks to its alliance with Hitler. And then the result was, when the Soviets, this alliance didn't work, and these huge amounts, millions of POWs captured by Nazi Germany, who were treated in horrendous circumstances at places like this. How did the Soviet Union, instead of blaming those responsible for the war, Stalin and his entourage, they blamed the poor soldiers who were taken prisoner. Now, Poland, under Soviet occupation from 1944-45, depends on which part of Poland, until 1989. So this is a sign which put up in 1962, and here we also see the date: 41,000 Soviet prisoners who were who died at this location. But here we have something in Free Poland, and we have another sum of people. Actually, the research for this was largely done even during the communist era, but when things started to free up a bit. We have here a sum of, at Stalag 324 were imprisoned around 120,000 Soviet POWs, of which died 80 to 90,000. And there we have the source: Ostrów Mazowiecka, Okolica, by M. Bartniczak, and published in Warsaw in 1987. And Mr. Bartniczak also published in 1978 a book on the Stalag 324 and 333, which was one of the main sources of information for what happened at this location. Now, obviously, this is now a personal opinion of mine. Those of you who sympathise with Stalin or Hitler will probably not agree, or Putin for that matter, will probably not agree. I may be thinking too much on a human point of view. I think it was Hitler said that Stalin thinks in terms of centuries, and Stalin himself said one death's a tragedy, or alleged to have said one death's a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. Overhead you may be able to hear an aeroplane. That aeroplane is an airbase, but it's called Komorów. At Komorów was Stalag 333, and there's the aeroplane up there. Don't know if you can see it, and probably not. And that was where those survivors from this POW camp were taken there. Stalag 324 came under the auspices of Stalag 333, and there were several units of Stalag 333 in this area of eastern Poland. So there you go, there's my opinion piece on the Soviet POWs and their fate. If you found that interesting, then you might want to subscribe. I upload every Tuesday and every Friday at 2000 hours my time. I'm based in Poland and in Germany, so if you're interested in research-based history, then you might want to subscribe. Also, you get to see the places where things happened. Not many people do that. In fact, I think I'm the only one, or maybe there's someone else, but anyway, I'm here all the time. So thanks so much for being here with me today, and all the best from me. And now I'm going to get back into my motorhome and drive off to a place called Różan, and at Różan I shall be doing another video, and then I'm going to a place called Krasnoselce, sorry. And there was a massacre on the 5th of September 1939, and I shall be talking about that. Anyway, I'm getting back in here.